Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Watch the Weather Channel, you see what's going to be like in Portland, Oregon. You know, Clayton, Georgia is the #1 place in the country to have 100%. You know, there are all kind of people there. My house will probably be the only empty house on the whole lake, so I'm going to watch it on TV. Maybe we should have a team meeting about how we're going to do this. I haven't thought of that yet.
Well, you know, some of the players did watch the eclipse from the practice field. They had some pictures of it, but Coach Saban not that excited about it. And I got to be honest with you, I was more in the Coach Nick Saban camp. It didn't do much in my house. I went out in the backyard right at 1:30, and it looked pretty normal. But it was a weather phenomenon, that is for sure. Alabama football hoping to have another phenomenal season. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Tonight, once again, Diet Pepsi. Love that sound, but let me tell you what, it tastes even better going down. Cold and refreshing, just the way I like it. Pick up some great Pepsi products. A Southern Original the next time you're at your local grocery or convenience store. 11 days until kickoff, and the anticipation for the opening game against Florida State on September 2nd in Atlanta, Rodney, is in full force. The Associated Press poll, made up of sports writers and broadcasters, was released yesterday, with the Crimson Tide coming in at #1, and this marks the 10th year in a row that Alabama has been #1 in the AP poll at some point. It's the third time in the last 5 years, and the second straight year they've opened #1. Now, if you want some negative on that, the other times Alabama opened #1 in the preseason AP poll under Nick Saban, they did not win the national championship.
First time for everything.
Yeah, there is. There's a look at the top 10. You can see Alabama, the only SEC team in the top 10. Ohio State comes in at #2, even though Florida State had more first-place votes. By the way, Alabama had 51 of 62 first-place votes. Florida State had 4. Ohio State had 3. But it is Ohio State, meaning that we'll get a 1 versus 3 matchup, just like in the coaches' poll, not 1 versus 2. USC, Clemson, Penn State, Oklahoma, Washington, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma State. Auburn and LSU, Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee also ranked in the top 25. Auburn and LSU just outside the top 10. Well, Alabama football wrapped up the final scrimmage of fall camp last Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium, with the Tide players noticing some differences between the two preseason scrimmages.
I thought it was better than the first one. You know, we saw some improvement in protection and stuff like that, and communication I think was a lot better, as far as, you know, having everyone on the same page with the offensive line, going back to the running backs, knowing what they're doing. And so I think I saw probably the most improvement right there.
Just overall efficiency, communication within, you know, the line and the running backs. You know, overall we did a really good job of you know, just playing better as a team, you know, trying to get more comfortable with everyone. And I think, you know, we're really starting to hit our stride, and, you know, hopefully we can keep that going.
Well, Rodney, some noticeable differences between the two scrimmages. And what did you see? I know we were limited in our viewing period, but talking with people, what are some things that you heard in regards to the difference between the first scrimmage and the second scrimmage?
Well, I don't know that there was a lot of difference. Of course, it's very difficult when you don't get to watch it. I mean, so you have to kind of rely on what the picture everyone else paints for you. But, you know, I think the real thing, Gary, that stands out, continues to stand out, this defense, we've talked about, how long have we talked about all these guys that they've lost? But it's just amazing from the indications that this defense, once again, even though in spite of losing all those great players, all those great leaders over the last year, and even the last 2 years for that matter, this defense has a chance to be really good. A lot of fantastic athletes on that side of the ball, guys that I think are ready to step up and make their marks, just like the guys in the past have done.
You know, Rodney, that defense is fast and talented, as you alluded to, and we talked about this on my radio show yesterday. When you lose Jonathan Allen, Dalvin Tomlinson, Tim Williams, Ryan Anderson, Reuben Foster, Marlon Humphrey, and Eddie Jackson, it shouldn't be that way. Most places that would be a generational one-time defense, and you'd be saying the next year as a fan, boy, we're going to be terrible this year. It speaks to what Nick Saban has built here, not just in terms of recruiting, but also the player development, that you lose that many NFL players off one defense, and you're talking about the possibility that they may be just as good this year.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, we like to see the games get started and see how they respond before really making judgment. But I'm telling you, when you talk about speed, you know, Gary, just at a glimpse, this might be the fastest Alabama defense under Nick Saban that he's had, you know, here at Alabama anyway. Just a glimpse. You look at the linebackers and how they run. Rashaan Evans, Sean Deion Hamilton looks like he's recovered from that knee injury. You look outside, you see guys like Christian Miller, Terrell Lewis, Anthony Jennings. Guys are going to have to replace like Tim Anderson and Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson. You know, some young guys. Chris Allen, young true freshman out of Baton Rouge, a guy that really seems to be making a mark. Dylan Moses, also a true freshman out of Baton Rouge. I mean, these guys are, when you look at them physically, they don't look like true freshmen. I think those are the kind of guys that can contribute and help this defense have some depth and quality depth.
Offensively, Bo Scarborough was sick. He was back at practice today, by the way. Josh Jacobs still out with a pulled hamstring, so a couple of running backs weren't there. Quarterback play, from what I hear, was up and down a little bit with Jalen Hurts. But offensively, it sounds like there's still some work to be done, but the parts are there.
Yeah, and I think, too, when you're going up against a defense like that, and people talk about what happened in the scrimmages, and especially this last scrimmage, when you're talking about a defense that's running blitzes, stunts, all of these different things, when you've got an offensive line that's still kind of a work in progress. You've got Jonah Williams, who moved over from the right side to the left tackle. Then you've got, you know, Lester Cotton there really starting to develop at right guard. You're trying to find the solution at right tackle. You've got some different guys that are working. You know, sometimes you have to remember the coaches are putting these players in positions to see how they respond, not necessarily to see a finished product, but to see how they're going to respond to certain situations.
Well, a lot of the talk following the first scrimmage was about the place kicking and which player would wind up being the place kicker for the season, and there was a lot of doubt about any of them being able to get it done. But good news is Coach Saban was much more positive on the kicking game and the special teams overall following practice number 2.
We were much better. I mean, J.K. made a 51-yard field goal. I thought, you know, Joseph, I think, kicked 2 field goals, made 1, missed 1. I think we made the rest. What's that? Andy was 3 for 3. And we kicked a couple of them now when it was pouring down the rain.
As we pointed out last week, it's not just the place kicking. Of course, obviously, punting's in good shape with J.K. Scott, but, you know, you're replacing the place kicker, the snapper, the holder, your return man. There's a lot of work to be done special teams, but it seems like that's an area they've improved.
Well, I think so. It's very positive to hear. You know, it wouldn't surprise me, Gary, if when the season starts that we have one of those 2 kicker systems as far as field goals are concerned. Andy Papanastos handling the short-range kicks. J.K. Scott handling the long-range kicks. J.K. had a 51-yarder in the scrimmage. I don't know if you mentioned that, but, you know, Gary, they said that would have been good from 60. I mean, he's got the leg. It's amazing. Of course, Joseph Belovas, the true freshman, he's a guy that's still in competition as well. So I think they're going to be fine there, and they're going to have some really good kick punt returners, even though, like you said, Trevon Diggs did some of that at the end of last year. Xavier Marks has done some of it. I think a true freshman by the name of Henry Ruggs, watch out. That guy can be dynamic.
Well, they got to start tying it up in a hurry. Fall camp coming to an end, and the game now just 11 days away. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, 5 Associated Press All-Americans for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that is the most in the country. We'll have details. Plus, former Alabama players are flourishing in the NFL preseason. More news and highlights from the NFL coming up next, and we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, there's the information on the screen. You can call us at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882, or email us TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us. Use that hashtag TITV so Bethany and Brandon can pull it off and we can use it on the air. We'll be back with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider Television will return right after this. Associated Press released its 2017 preseason All-American football team on Monday, or actually today, with 5 Crimson Tide players making the list, the most of any school this year. Defensive back Mika Fitzpatrick named to the first team, while wide receiver Calvin Ridley, running back Bo Scarborough, punter J.K. Scott, and offensive lineman Jonah Williams all made the second team. And welcome back into TITV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. That's a lot of great Alabama players on the preseason All-American list. And Rodney, this is another area I think where we've gotten spoiled under Nick Saban. You just come to expect it and you're like, so what? Yeah. There was a time when if you had one first-team All-American or one All-American period, Alabama fans would be like, yeah. Now you've got one first-teamer and 4 second teamers. I think some people are disappointed there weren't more first teamers.
Can you imagine if Bob Hope still had his show, his Christmas show, where they introduced all the All-Americans? Half of them would be from Alabama.
Yeah, 5 leads the way. That's the most. Ohio State had 3. LSU and Auburn from the SEC both had 2. But this, again, is a representation of just how much talent is on this football team. And again, one thing I want to say about Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's the lone first-teamer preseason. I think he'll be there at the end of the year, too. And I've thought back after Nick Saban praised him about guys who I think Nick Saban holds in the same category that he holds in Minkah Fitzpatrick. And it's just a handful that I can think of. Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, Dante Hightower, Jonathan Allen. There are a few others, but he truly is a special player, not just in what he does on the football field, but what he does in the classroom, the way he handles himself in the community. What a terrific representative for the University of Alabama number 29 is. And, of course, Jonah Williams and the other guys are as well.
Yeah, fantastic. When you talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick, Gary, he's a guy, he was not an early enrollee. He came here in the summer before his freshman year. He basically started almost from day one. Certainly he contributed very significantly early on, and I was just a guy that's made a lot of big plays since the first day he's been here.
All-Americans, of course, the key is to be there at the end of the season, the postseason All-American teams. Well, it was first reported last week by the Tuscaloosa News' Aaron Suttles that Alabama and Miami in negotiations to play in the 2021 Chick-fil-A kickoff game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. The two programs last played each other, of course, following the 1992 season on New Year's Eve before 1993 in the Sugar Bowl when Alabama blew out the Canes 34-13 to win national championship number 12. Rodney, another kickoff game in Atlanta. It looks like another big game opponent. This has become the trend. I have gotten a few people call me on the radio show or email me about, hey, we want to see some home-and-home series against big-name teams. It's just getting more and more difficult to do that.
Yeah, I like the neutral site games, but, you know, you mentioned that Miami game. Has it really been 25 years? I mean,
it has.
Can you believe that? I mean, wow. I mean, time has flown. Certainly that was one of the marquee wins in Alabama football history.
There were not many people outside of Alabama that thought the Tide had a chance that night.
I wasn't sure they did either, but
they whipped them. They whipped them. And that was Gene Stallings. And despite winning 70 games in 7 years, his only national championship, his only SEC championship in 1992. Of course, Steve Spurrier kept him from a few SEC titles. Well, former Alabama linebacker Reuben Foster was promoted to the starting lineup of the San Francisco 49ers last week, due in large part to an injury that sidelined veteran Malcolm Smith, but still he had to earn it. Head coach Kyle Shanahan named Foster the starter at the team's weak side linebacker position, adding, though, that while Foster earned the position based on performance, he'd be competing for the position throughout the season and have to keep up the good work if he wants to stay there. Something tells me he will. Last year as a rookie, Derrick Henry ran for 490 yards and 5 touchdowns. On Saturday in a preseason game against the Carolina Panthers, first-team defense, by the way, because he was in there early, he scored 2 touchdowns and finished with 36 yards on 16 carries. He also caught 3 passes for 17 yards. He's looking for a bigger role in the offense along with DeMarco Murray this season there in Nashville. Bad news from Indianapolis. Colts center Ryan Kelly will have surgery on his injured foot. He's out indefinitely. In fact, it's being reported that he'll be out 6 to 8 weeks, meaning he'll miss the first couple of games of the regular season. He did not play in the Colts' first 2 preseason games. He was their first-round pick in 2016 and started all 16 games. Rodney, did you realize last year he did not give up a sack as a rookie?
Amazing.
So he is going to be missed. Well, coming up, Alabama soccer is starting the season off in undefeated fashion. We'll have the highlights from the first 2 victories coming up next. Plus, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Go ahead and get in now, and we'll have you ready to go. 205-348-9882 is the number. There's the email, and you can tweet at us as well because we want to hear from you. We're just 11 days away from Alabama, Florida State. This is Tider Insider TV, and we're back after this. Bama soccer off to the good start that you're looking for. 2 games at home, 2-0 in the season. They defeated Jacksonville State 5-1 in the season opener, and then took down Samford. JSU game was on Friday. The Samford game on Sunday, 2-1. Alabama next in action on Thursday, taking on South Florida here in Tuscaloosa. All right, welcome back to TITV. They are lined up for us tonight on the phone line, so let's get right to it, Rodney. First up, the Tomato Man from Walker County, Sammy, is with us. He grows them vine ripened in Walker County. I know. He brought me some. How you doing, Sammy?
Thanks, Gary and Rodney. Good to be talking to y'all guys again, and everything. Appreciate that, Gary. And what my comment or take tonight is, if we can get improvement in the passing game and consistency in the passing game, I see this offense. I see them with the players we have in positions we have. Totally awesome. Maybe the potential up the charts. I mean, this is, I see that. What do y'all think?
Yeah, Sammy, I think you're right. I think potentially that could be a 5,000-yard offense and, 40-point-a-game offense. Now, as you said, you got to have some consistency in the passing game. But as we said earlier, I think the pieces are there. You get the improvement that you're looking for. They got a lot of weapons, Rod.
Yeah, and I think it starts up front with the offensive line, Gary. They've got to get some cohesiveness there, which they're working on certainly. And, he's got to have protection. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, has to have protection to be able to deliver the ball. As Coach Saban always says, the receivers have to run the right routes and make the plays. But, I'm with you, Sammy. I think that they've got a chance now. It may not be early in terms of being at their best, but I think as the season goes along, I do think that passing game is going to improve, and I think the offense is going to be really good.
Thank you, Sammy. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to Bluff Park and talk with Rick. Rick, welcome into the program. How are you?
Just fine, fellas. Appreciate you taking my call. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. Everybody knows that there's a left-handed quarterback wearing number 13 on the bench on the roster this year. The 8A game was not a left-handed ex-quarterback at Alabama, where they wore number 13 on the field also, and David Smith.
Yeah, he worked the game as an official. That's right.
Absolutely. And I'd like to ask about the tight ends, in particular Irv Smith and Miller Forrestall. Forrestall catches the ball like a wide receiver, and I've heard the same thing about Smith.
All right,
let me know what you think. Thank you, fellas.
Good call. Quick note on David Smith. The reason he worked the AA game, he's not allowed to work any Alabama games during the regular season because, as a former player, you can't work the school you played for. All right, yeah, I think he's right on the tight ends. I know you lose O.J. Howard, who was a terrific player, but they got a lot of guys that can catch the football, as he was alluding to.
Yeah, and I like Forrestall. Certainly, I thought he was really good last year as a true freshman. Had some nice catches, but also Irv Smith. I mean, he's a sophomore now, and I think that the year he's developed really, really well. He had a big spring too, I thought, Gary, and I think Irv Smith's a guy to really keep an eye on. Obviously they have some other guys that I think are in the mix. Hell, Hinches has been around a while. I mean, you certainly want to mention him because he's been a strong blocker, contributor since his true freshman year. He's a junior now. And you have a couple of young guys, a couple of true freshmen out of the state of Texas, Major Tennyson and also Kedrick James. Both those guys are excellent prospects.
All right, let's go to Maplesville and talk with Keith. Keith, welcome in. How are you?
Doing good, Gary. Rodney, how are y'all doing tonight?
Very well, thank you.
Got a question about the return game. I want to know about who you think we're going to have deep on kickoffs and punts, and also how the progress of Trayvon Diggs is coming at corner, if you think he's going to be the starter or not. And I just want to have a shout-out to Coach Stallings. I hope he's doing much better, and I pray that he gets past this last little spell he had. Y'all take care.
We do too, Keith. First return game, they got a lot of different candidates. I tell you what, I'd like to see Henry Ruggs involved, the freshman from Montgomery. I think he's special. But they've got several guys who are capable on punts and kickoffs. And, and they may use several of them early on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We've seen them use different combinations. And generally on kickoffs, it seems like they put a guy back there that they feel is a really strong return guy as well as a guy who is a good blocker. I think we could see that. And I think Ruggs could figure in as a return guy. Trayvon Diggs, I think he returned the opening kickoff last year
he did
against USC, and he certainly returned punts later in the year. He could be back there. We mentioned Xavier Marks, I think. He could maybe he had a punt return for a touchdown last year. So those are guys that are certainly in the mix.
And as a corner, I think Trayvon Diggs is coming along fine, don't you?
He is. Yeah, I think he's done an outstanding job. Gary's got a lot of potential now. Whether or not he'll actually start, I think so. But, they could decide to go in that first game with experience and maybe slide Minka Fitzpatrick down to corner and put Hootie Jones back there at safety, or maybe Deontay Thompson. We'll see. But right now, if I had to guess, I would think, Trayvon Diggs certainly has a great opportunity to start.
205-342 WVUA is the phone number. We'll be back with more phone calls, emails, and tweets right after this. Stay with us. We're back on TITV, and let's get right back to the phone lines and talk with John over in Bessemer. John, how are you?
What's going on, man?
Hey, man.
Roll Tide.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, has Alabama got a chance of beating Auburn this year? And I want to know, everybody telling me Georgia's going to go all the way this year later.
Alabama is favored against Florida State. They're right around a 7-point favorite, and Alabama will have a chance to go all the way.
Yeah, they will. What was that about Auburn?
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that.
That's a long way off, John.
I messed us up there. We were supposed to take Doug's email first. That's my mistake, but we'll get to it now. Doug in Western Massachusetts has an email question for us. And how serious are the injuries to Josh Jacobs and Najee Harris? Will they be good to play against FSU? Well, Najee Harris is already back after being held out the first scrimmage. Josh Jacobs, this hamstring they're troublesome injuries, and he's still not at practice today. So the longer he goes without getting back at practice, you do have to worry about his status for the season opener.
Well, he's missed both scrimmages, I guess now, what, 10, 12 days he's been out, something like that. Yeah, I thought he would be back by now, but he's not. So thankfully, we talk about that depth at running back. Alabama has a lot of depth. You just don't want to get anyone else injured.
And the good news, as I said earlier in the program, Bo Scarborough, who was in bed sick, Coach Saban said on Friday and Saturday, was back at practice today. But we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears open for a report on Josh Jacobs. Hopefully he'll be back at the practice field here soon. All right, let's get a tweet in. We love it when those tweets come in using the hashtag TITV. And this is from Don Juan, who's pretty loyal with the tweets. Who will be the return players? Well, we touched on that already, Don Juan. You know, they're still trying those guys out. Xavier Marks, of course. We talked about Henry Ruggs, the freshman. Tavon Diggs has been there in the past. And, you know, they're going to take a look at several of those guys, and we'll find out, I guess, on Saturday night, September 2nd.
Well, you covered a game. You saw Ruggs, what he did in that Alabama-Mississippi All-Star.
He's special.
Yeah, special.
He's got a gear that not many people in college football have, and I know he's just a true freshman, but you're right. I saw him in football. I saw him in football gear. I thought take it 91 yards in about 9 seconds.
You know, people that observed, that's been around here a long time, mentioned the word faster David Palmer after the scrimmage. We'll see.
That's high praise, because David Palmer was really, really good. If you didn't see David Palmer, he was special. Still to come, Jalen Hurts thanked his offensive line in the best way that a quarterback can thank an offensive lineman, through their stomachs. More TITV coming up after this. Well, just one day after the Alabama football scrimmage on Saturday, quarterback Jalen Hurts had his offensive line out to dinner on Sunday. These pictures were tweeted out by freshman offensive lineman Kendall Randolph. And the mill may have left a dent in Hurts' bank account, but I guarantee you he's hoping that it will help him not get hurt during the regular season. And pretty smart guy. All right, that is going to wrap up the show tonight. Before we get out of here, though, our beautiful shirts and ties, as always, provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original elephant wear. Go by and see them in person or shop online at lockerroom.biz. They are a terrific place to look your best just in time for football season. Also, you can see a replay of the show tonight at 10:30 or catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. This has been Tighter Insider TV. Good night.